Right, ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to Louis B. Free Radio Show, Brain Food from the Heartland. You've heard me talking about the book Signs and Skymates, the ultimate guide to astrological compatibility. I have the author, Dossé-Via Trenou, as my guest. Dossé-Via, I'm delighted. Good morning.
It's really great to be here, Louis. Thank you for having me. Good morning.
Good morning to you. A little bit about your background, if you would.
Yes, I am a West African astrologer born in France and having lived in America up until 2018 when I moved back to West Africa, where I currently live with my children. And I got into astrology at the age of 10, thanks to my parents who knew a little bit about astrology and would tell me about my sun sign Scorpio. And of course, being a Scorpio, I needed to find out for myself and define myself for myself. And so I became a budding astrologer doing research on Ask Jeeves in the pre-Google days. And when I was 18, I started my Twitter page, Scorpio Mystique, and then Know the Zodiac for all the signs. Started my Twitter page, Scorpio Mystique.
For you, 10 years old, when I was reading that, I was fascinated by it because I could see a young person kind of being intrigued by the zodiac, intrigued by things a little bit, and then kind of, going in a different direction, or maybe kind of keeping it on the back burner, interested once in a while. You really, really got into it. And again, the book available everywhere and everywhere online. Signs and Skymates, the ultimate guide to astrological compatibility. And let me just assure you, folks, that it will lead to an awful lot of discussion and an awful lot of interest. And I love it. So Running Press Books, we can get it anywhere. That drive to continue. But do you think it's, I divine, it was in you? What would you say?
Knowing my natal chart and knowing that my moon is in Virgo in the 10th house of career, I definitely would say that it was also cosmically coordinated for me to become an astrologer. I need to go into the nitty-gritty details of fields that I study, and human psychology has been something I've been intrigued by. Maybe it's also a combination of being a middle child. In the book, I write about how we're more than just our birth charts. We have so many different factors that influence what we're interested in and who we evolve to be. And I've always wanted to feel seen, and sometimes I felt misunderstood. So astrology felt as a great tool. It was a wonderful tool of self-discovery. And then it's a blessing to be able to share that tool with others.
That's wonderful. Again, and I've got so many pages marked down and so many notes, but I do have to say, I know we have a limited amount of time, but I loved the dedication you end with. Thank you, universe. That was beautiful. In your chapter 1, a lot of things, and I have to tell you, from someone that I'm an obsessive reader. Do I say I read for a living? Whatever. I'm an obsessive reader. I am an obsessive reader, and I love your best way I could say this, Dossé-Via, is you're so lovingly analytical, self-analytical and analytical. Analytical in a loving way. I'm not sure. I'll keep doing
That makes
it.
sense to me. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. That's how I found when I started reading. And again, when I was reading in your chapter 1, that's how I felt like early. I have it marked on page 2, by the way.
Oh, wow.
So it didn't take long to get that.
I appreciate that. And it does come from the years of studying my chart and other people's chart and realizing we have so many layers to ourselves, and it would be doing us a disservice to limit ourselves to just our sun signs. And I'm always curious and intrigued by who people are beyond the first impression I may have of them. And even people I've known for years, it feels like there's always an opportunity to get to know new aspects of them and of my own self. And I think that's where this lovingly analytical, although I can be critical as well.
Well,
But that side comes out.
I would guess, I would say probably critical, but in a in a nice way. Yeah, yeah, in an observational, in an analytical way, not a, people think critical, you critique something. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're being mean. You don't have to be mean
Exactly. That's a
critical.
very good
That's what
point.
I'm
You
saying.
don't. Hmm. Very well put.
And I love how you wrote about that and how you got drawn into it. The decision to actually write the book, and may I say, the book is, I was going to say it's massive. It's very complete. It is very, very complete. How often do you see these days seven books that are 700 pages? There's so much information in there. When
Yes.
you decided, it was like, okay, I'm going to write this book.
So that is thanks to my Scorpio community. When I got into astrology digitally, it was with my platform Scorpio Mystique on Twitter. Back in 2011 is when I started that Twitter, and I was a freshman at the University of Southern California. And by my junior year, I had started writing Scorpios and Skymates, which I planned on self-publishing at the time. And I really enjoyed that process of writing a book about Scorpio and their compatibility with the signs. But because my moon is in Virgo, I was a perfectionist and I just never went through with the self publishing. I just kept it in my archives. And in 2020, I was reached out to by a book agent, a literary agent. And Scorpios and Skymates ended up being my book proposal to different publishers. And they
Wow.
really loved it and asked me to make a book for all the signs. So I thank my younger self for writing Scorpios and Skymates because it led to Signs and Skymates 8 years later.
An awful lot of work, a lot of effort in putting it all together. And again, I find it very complete in the sense that, and again, people may want to go further and further, but what you do in
Mm-hmm.
the book is fantastic. I love that. I love that aspect of it because there's, again, so much. Talk about the multidimensional nature of sun signs and that, and people think, well, I'm a Gemini or I'm a Scorpio or whatever, and dot 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 dot, whatever, a sentence or two, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
And you learn in the book, in your book, uh, I in Sky Bates, how there's so much more. There's so much more.
Yes, and even one of the ways to really be willing to know what's more is to study the opposite sign of what your sun sign is. And often your soul needs more attributes from that opposite sign. So, for example, a Gemini's opposite sign is Sagittarius. And so, even though Gemini is a sign of communication and connection, they need more expansiveness. They need more of an ability to come outside of their own ideas and take in worldly ideas. Or Capricorn. Capricorn is known on a more stereotypical level to be super serious, high standards, very, very selective, and suspicious at times. Their opposite sign is Cancer, which is all about emotion and sensitivity. That energy also exists in Capricorn, but it's more underneath the depths. And when they tap into their sensitivity, they become stronger as Capricorns. And that's what I want people to remember, that just because you have certain core themes that influence you does not mean you can't also be way beyond what you're known as being.
When you, ladies and gentlemen, I'm talking with Dossé-Via Trenou and again Scorpio Mystique, and we've got those links up on Twitter also. Dossé-Via.com. We've got those links up also at DOSSEVIA.com. And you are so multi-talented when I looked at that site, and you're so many things that you're into, which is absolutely wonderful. Again, the book is Signs and Skymates, the ultimate guide to astrological compatibility, available everywhere and everywhere online. I always like to say, please try to buy it as close to home as possible and keep those booksellers in business, if you will. When people would say, again, being Gemini, I would hear this for I don't know how many years. Since I was young, oh, you've got two personalities, and that would be it. That's it. Like, and as I got older, my response would people say, "What sign are you?" I'm Gemini. Oh, you've got two personalities. I said, "Oh no, many more than that.
Exactly.
Many more than that." Right, right. And
Many more. Gemini, ooh, the Peter Pan of the zodiac, the shapeshifter, the chameleon, and Mercury, it rules Gemini. Mercury, the planet of communication. I also talk about ancient Yoruba spirituality, and I associate the planets with Yoruba spirituality and mythology. So the equivalent of Mercury in the Yoruba tradition is Ishu, and that is the leader of the marketplace. So Gemini has this malleability and adaptability that other signs sometimes fear because they never know what's coming next with Gemini. So it is too simplistic to reduce them to just duality. It's more multiplicity
to
and
any
ever changing nature.
to any of the signs, correct? To just to, and you learn about it in reading your book, Signs and Skymates. That again, being an old, aged flower child, old hippie, people talked about zodiac astrology as long as I can remember, and then again, getting it down to like a sentence or two, which is just so it's not good. There's so
Yeah, it
much.
helps mainstream astrology sell, I guess, horoscopes in the back of magazines. I definitely think it was connected to being able to sell things to people. But the true depth of astrology means you've done your chart with a professional astrologer. Now, thanks to calculators, like on the Know the Zodiac site, there's a free birth chart calculator. You can already begin the journey even without having a professional astrologer. You want to take your time because you're going to notice that there are things that contradict themselves in your chart. You could have a Cancer sun and then a Sagittarius moon, and those could seem like two complete opposite extremes. And you have to get in tune with your own self to know which elements seem to be most prominent, and then be able to know yourself enough to express your needs, your boundaries, your love languages, not just romantically, but with friendships, family dynamics, coworkers.
And what one of the other things that I love about Signs and Skymates, the ultimate guide to astrological compatibility, Dossé-Via Trenou's book, available everywhere online, is that it opens discussion. What I would love is people read it and then to communicate more with someone, be it whatever, and say, "Oh, I read this," and then just talk about things. It's a wonderful book. I know to create conversation with. And when you said that you, Uba, I believe you mentioned, and I don't have this in my notes, your grandmother. And,
Thank you for
right?
mentioning her.
Oh boy, I know I'm not going to get Marimia.
Mamima.
Lamima. Okay, I'm
Mm-hmm,
sorry, I
mm-hmm. No,
didn't
no,
have
no,
my
close
notes, but
enough. And
you
this is
said that.
her bracelet with me right now. So I love that you brought her up. Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah. It made me think of it when you mentioned that. The response to the book has got to be tremendous. I know it's new, but it's got to be tremendous, correct?
Yes, and Science and Skymates is a Sagittarius, so I knew it was going to have a global appeal, but it's really beautiful to see people of all demographics. It was important for me as an African astrologer to highlight the African roots of astrology because this can be a field that at times can seem whitewashed, and then I can sometimes appear to be one of the only Black woman astrologers. Even with an app on the App Store, I'm in the minority when it comes to that, but actually being able to showcase the ancient indigenous African roots of astrology and for it to be welcomed and celebrated by people all over the world who are like, wow, thank you for letting me know this. I'm like, oh, wow, my work here is done. Like, I really feel like a consciousness shift can come from this. And I feel so grateful that people are open to this knowledge. It's really healing for me as an astrologer to see it
That's
so well received.
just I've got to say, and I hope you don't mind. I don't think your work here is done. I think it's just dare say, I think it's just begun, very honestly, and I hope you don't mind to say that. It's like, okay, Louis, what about your work? Have you written a 700-page book yet? Well, should I say not yet? No, at my point, it's not happening. But
Who knows? Who knows? You're a
oh,
Gemini. Ooh,
yeah.
well, perpetually, like I said, perpetually youthful. You have many lives to go.
Oh, thank you, I guess. I'm thinking, yeah, okay, thank you for that. Some of the other things that you're involved with, again, I know you got to split in a couple of minutes, but if people go to Dossé-Via.com, you'll learn a lot more about you and some of the other, so many things that you're involved with. Can you tell us about the model, the music, the mantras. The mantra in the book is a little bit.
My grandmother, my Mima, when she transitioned and passed away in 2020, she was the reason I had moved back to West Africa. And one of the ways I mourned and grieved her death was through releasing my first EP of musical mantras and meditations, co-created with Electric Butter producers in Los Angeles that I went to USC with. And I had been working on these these mantras since 2017 as a way to affirm my own self. Some of the lyrics say things like, "You are here for a reason. By prioritizing your healing, you are already healed. Life loves you infinitely and abundantly. Step into your abundance." And I studied narrative studies at USC and understand the power of programming in media and music. And I found it important to be able to use my love for music and poetry and writing to use my words as a poet and a public speaker and blend it with high vibrational music and combine it to create mantras and meditations that people can listen to in the morning or when they sleep. And it's created a really huge portal of people feeling like their lives have transformed for the better by listening to this EP called Dream with Dossé-Via. It's one of my favorite creations, and it's dedicated to my grandma, my Gemini grandma, my Mima.
That's beautiful, beautiful, and it prompts me for asking you, what do you do in your spare time? Of course, I can't imagine there's much spare time.
So I try my best. Astrology has taught me that since my moon is in Virgo in the 10th house, I do have workaholic tendencies. And so since I know that, I purposely take time off. And my children, we love to spend time going to the beach in West Africa, to the pool, and to the forest. I love bike riding in the forest. I saw a deer jump in front of me right before coming to America. It was so beautiful to be connected to nature. And that's one of my favorite activities to do.
Isn't that what I know? I get to the park as often as I can these days, and to see a deer, to just be close, and I was looking at the deer was looking at me, and it was like I wanted to approach, but I felt it would. It's a beautiful. That's always a beautiful. I always feel better when if I'm exercising. Yeah, I can walk, I can run in the streets, I can do steps at a stadium, etc. But when I'm in the park, when I'm in the woods, I know I'm still getting exercise when I do it the other way, but I feel, what do I want to say, spiritually inside in my soul better when I'm.
Absolutely. At our core, astrology is the connection to the elements: air, water, fire, and earth. And we have all elements in our charts to varying degrees. And even if we don't have that many, for example, earth sign placements, that's even more of a reason to be connected to earth. So I'm happy that you understand that. And I hope others as well will spend more time in nature. It's deeply healing and therapeutic.
I love talking with you, Dossé-Via, and I absolutely love the book Signs and Skymates, The Ultimate Guide to Astrological Compatibility. I'll talk more about the availability in just a minute. You are lovely. You are such a wondrous human, and you've gifted our world with so much, so much. And I'm
Thank you.
honored to have you on the Louis B. Free Radio Show, Brain Food from the Heartland. I would urge people to get the book. I hope we can do the gig again. You're amazing. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
How wonderful, folks. Again, as I say, the book available everywhere and everywhere. She is lovely. She is incredible. And person